Hey Acers! Welcome back to Ace Role Playing Games. This is the official channel for the Ace Role Playing Games Clubs, and I'm your host, Mason Emerson. And it is awesome to see you all today. So, I first want to start out by thanking all the wonderful Ace clubs that are out there. Right now, the main club that I know of, if there's other ones out there, you haven't told me yet, but is the South Jordan Ace Role Playing Games Club. They meet Tuesday nights from 6 to 9, and it would be great to have you there at Mythos Games. And I'll even tell you the address and put it in later, but if you go to mythos.games, they have a their address and everything like that. It's going to be really awesome to be there. But yeah, the address is 681 West, 1000 or 10,600 South, or as we like to say it here, 106 South. So it's 681 West, 106 South. So that's right off the freeway for those of you in the Salt Lake County or in Utah counties. You just get off the freeway at 106 South, go west under the freeway, and take your left at that light that's just after you hit the golf course. So right at the golf course, take a left there, and you take the first left, and then the next left, and that puts you right in the parking lot for Mythos. So tell your parents, those of you who are old enough to have a car or access to one and can drive there, come on in. It would be great to have you. So today's topic is storytelling basics. Last week I went over the basics of the Savage Worlds game dice system, and I think that what was brought up to me by one of my viewers is a valid point. This technically should be 0. And I think this will be episode 0. And episode 0 is basically that you need to have kind of a foundation to build on. Now, one of the coolest websites out there for me is Khan Academy. And I'm not quite as cool as he is yet, and I don't have my own pad yet, so I can't take my face off the screen and do what he does and just teach you from the numbers on the pad. But I can talk you through some of the gotchas and catchfalls and things like that that would inhibit you from being able to have a good, strong foundation on which to build your gaming. So, as a game master, welcome to episode 0. And episode 0 is about storytelling basics. Now, I've said lots of times, and I will say it again, a role-playing game is not a story when you create it as a game master, because the players are not going to do what you want them to do. If you really want the characters in the story to do what you want them to do, go write a novel. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. My uncle, the late Dave Wolverton, also known as David Farland, he wrote lots of novels in his lifetime. Wrote for over 30 years. And he brought more than 100 novelists to publication. Many of them are amazing New York Times bestseller fantasy and science fiction authors. And even some authors who, well, they're doing better than I'll ever do in my lifetime. And that's fine. I do not begrudge anybody anything that makes this world a better place and makes it so that we all can share in love. And sometimes that love is creating. Sometimes that love is a mutual storytelling. That's what it's about. So, with that goal in mind, with the goal in mind of let's make ourselves into someone who can help bring a person some joy, just for a little bit. Let's look at the basics of storytelling. So I'm going to mark the time here at 4:30, and I'm going to try and actually put up like a little banner here. And that is basics of storytelling at 4:30. So, okay. If I don't get to it, sorry, I'm still getting to a point where my video production is going to be better. And one of my goals is to find a new way of is to learn the video editing software so that way I can start editing my own videos. With that said, in order to do that, though, I kind of need to let you guys know. So let me give you a story. I was hired by a company to help bring in agile practices and to improve the performance of a team. I did. I improved them by a whole bunch. I had 4 people on the team when I started. Well, 5 if you count the guy who started with me. So 5 people on the team when I started. One of the people who was the senior person on the team quit, and that was followed by the guy who started with me. And all that was left were the other 3 people. So it was just down to a team of 4. And then I worked with my manager. He hired more people, so we got it up to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We were almost at 10 people. Well, if you counted me, we were at 10. And then one of them, she just wasn't working out, and she went ahead and left us. And so they were just back down to 8 other people and myself, so 9 people. So I took those 9 people, and in 1 year's time, we delivered more agencies and were our clients than any time before. And yeah, we had problems, we had hiccups, we had speed bumps along the way, but we succeeded. And I succeeded so well that I worked myself out of a job. So, any of my viewers out there, lovely viewers, if you guys know anybody looking for a senior project manager, a scrum master, a senior scrum master, an agile coach, anything like that, I'm throwing that out there because that will allow me to have the income to be able to do a better software setup and hardware setup so that I can actually make better videos for you. So, hey, there's their little carrot. I'd love it if you help me find a new position. So just ask around, ask your parents, ask your friends to ask their parents. We need to just find me a position where I can be an agile coach or a trainer, or a scrum master, something like that, where I can help another company. And I don't mind working myself out of a job as long as I know that working myself out of a job is coming to give me more time to do the job search and everything. So anyway, and yeah, my company's been cool and let me stay on for a couple weeks to do some job searching. That said, let's get into what I just did there. I told a story. I had a beginning where I started with the company. I had a middle where I had problems, and I had an end where I've ended up here. And maybe this might seem like not so great of an ending, but what this does is it allows me to get a real raise, because in today's economy and everything, companies don't give us raises according to our performance and things like that. They are more than just like 3 or 4, maybe 5%. That's tiny. I'm going to be getting a new job, and I don't know where it is yet, but I'm going to be getting a new job with at least $5,000 a year better. And that's even better than what I was given. So I am excited to see what company I can help next. So that's the beginning, middle, end idea. And then it is an important idea. Now, for those of you who want to look at it and get a copy, I highly recommend this. My friend and neighbor and just overall one of the great guys in the world, Tracy Hickman, who created Ravenloft and Dragonlance and just all sorts of things. He is one of the OGs when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. He is one of the originals of all the originals. He joined TSR, that was the name of the parent company for Dungeons and Dragons before Wizards of the Coast bought him. He joined TSR back in the 1980s, and he and his wife Laura came up with Ravenloft, and it's still an amazing setting. And they've revamped it a few times and stuff. But his name's in every one of those books, and you'll see his name with his co-writer Margaret Weiss on a lot of other books. They've written Dungeons and Dragons stuff and all sorts of other stuff. And I could just gush on about him. And thanks to Tracy Hickman, role-playing gaming it got out of a very painful early period in its lifetime of, within the first 10, 15 years, there were accusations of Satanism in Dungeons and Dragons. And it was never there. It was never there. And it's because of good people like Tracy that the world was able, the at least in the United States where this was happening, was able to stop and go, wait a minute. How does that work? No, this is just a bunch of nerdy kids who really don't have too many other friends getting together and playing role-playing games. And I'm not saying that everybody was, but that's the stereotype of the people who played. And guess what? We're all still nerds, and that's okay. I'll give you my Ace role-playing games definition of a geek and a nerd. A geek has domain knowledge. So if you are a programmer, you are a programming geek. If you're a knitter, you're a knitting geek. If you are a role-playing gamer, you're a role-playing game geek. Those are geek things. But nerds, we're the ones who like the science fiction and the fantasy and the horror and the mystery. And we love to talk about these fictitious worlds that are created. And that's what we love about them. So anyway, back to my point about Tracy. He, his son Curtis, and my other friend Howard Taylor, shout out to all of them, they wrote about, I think the first edition was about 10 years ago. They wrote okay, so it was 2009. So not quite 20 years ago, but yeah, back in the antiquities, as it were. They wrote a really cool book called XDM. And it was a good book. And it had a lot of cool stuff in it. It had some reprints of some stuff that Tracy had written for Dragon Magazine. And oh man, was it fun and funny and enjoyable. But they have a second edition. And I recommend this. No sponsorship here. Just go out and get a copy of this. And part of it is in the back, they have story cycles. Now, first step in actually getting now to the meat of it. The first step in becoming a great game master is read a lot of stories, watch a lot of movies, listen to audiobooks, go to see plays, do whatever you can to immerse yourself in story. Make it your second language. Make it so, one time my friends and I, we stayed up all night one time till sunrise discussing. And this was back during only when West End Games had the Star Wars role-playing game. So this was back in the late 90s. We stayed up all night that one time, or at least until like 4 a.m, discussing how Emperor Palpatine came to power and how Darth Vader fell to the dark side. And we had one of the greatest discussions, and it was so much fun. And it was all freeform and dialogue and going around the room and taking turns, not unlike a role-playing game. And we discussed something fictional as if it were real, because that's what story does. So immerse yourself in story. Second, after you've immersed yourself in story, learn the basic elements of it, which are as simple as story is not... Hold on just a second. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, so the first thing is that a story is not a sequence of events. A story is a sequence of events and what they mean to a character. So that's why we need to look at kind of those elements there. First, the sequence of events. If there is a bank robbery, that is a thing that just happens. But if the bank robbery happened because the villain decided they want something, and I've mentioned this in previous videos, with the villain, what do they want? Why do they want it? How far are they willing to go to get it? What happens if they don't get it? And what do they hate? So maybe that why is tied to the hate. But what they are going to do there is the villain is going to do something. You as the game master, you're going to, as one podcast that I used to listen to said, we're the problems department. We throw problems at our players. So, first of all, you need to know what kind of a problem you might be throwing at your players. Second, you need to make sure that you've helped your players create characters that are going to fit with this story that they're going to create. Because we make the events, they create the story. So, if the villain is going to rob a bank, let's stick with that one. The villain's going to rob a bank, and he's going to, well, let's be fair, because there are girls that will do this too. So we'll say she. We'll say the villain is a she in this one, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's a person who wants something that's not theirs. Why do they want it? Why does she want it? Well, she wants it because she knows that the actually I am gonna renege and go for a he, because I've got a specific story in mind that I'm going to pull it from. Well, actually, we'll still say she. She wants to rob this bank because in this bank is a vault in their safe deposit. There's a safe deposit box in their safe deposit boxes that is not there. If you go through the bank's records, if like the bank released their records, like say to the police or something, it'll go from numbers 001, because it's an old bank, all the way through to 1,000. So let's say there's 1,000 safe deposit boxes in their vault. What if box 664 wasn't actually listed? It had all the other 999 people who have their vaults and have their safe deposit boxes and have their spare keys and everything like that. And so what if she breaks in to this bank with her team and takes all the bank customers that are there hostage? And they've disabled the security systems. And they've thrown up smoke bombs in the front windows so nobody can really see in. And then they fight really hard to get everybody else who's a hostage in the same clothes as they're wearing. In the meantime, your characters are the heroes, trying to they're the cops that are trying to solve this bank robbery. And they don't realize that this girl is one step ahead of them every step of the way, and they don't know why. You send in a pizza box with a recorder secretly hidden underneath, with a bug hidden underneath the little plastic thing that sits in the middle of the pizza box to keep the lid from pressing down on it. Little tables. I remember when those came out. Those were fun. Anyway, so say you hit a recorder under that, and they're spreading out the pizzas because they've had them in there for hours now. And suddenly you start hearing a language you can't understand. So you call in a linguistics expert, and the linguistics expert says, "Oh, that's just a recording from like an old communist dictatorship." And this is just kind of a setup to the story. So we need to know who the villain is. First of all, let's go back and just make this bank robbery simpler. I mean, obviously, I've introduced some complexities and some little twists and turns. Oh, another big note: don't try to be clever. Just give the players a common enemy and give them exactly what they're after. Don't try and outsmart them. Don't try and outclever them. Just pay attention to them and what they're doing. But if you want to make this bank robbery more interesting, make make an apartment fire on the other side of town. So the villain is willing to have an arsonist go in and start an apartment fire and threaten lots of innocent lives to make sure they can get into this bank where Vault 664 is missing. So this now sets up a conundrum for the heroes. They have to choose which one to go to. Again, there was a beginning. You're sitting in the cafe across the street, and suddenly the alarm bells go off at the bank. And then on TV, you see there's a fire across town. Now your players have to make a choice. And that's what we give them. We give them problems and choices, and they tell us how they solve it. So, the short version of this answer is then learn your story structures. Look at beginnings, middles, and ends, but don't have the solution planned out. Have the contingency of what happens if the players are attacked. Have a contingency in place for what happens if the villain actually captures them. Be willing to give them using, and I'll get back to Benny's in a little bit in the next video or so, but be willing to tell them, okay, you have this much effort and this much time to be able to resolve this situation. Okay, the villain has overpowered you, and now, like any good, I mean, like they pointed out that the Batman stories in the 1960s, he always got captured. The thing is that in classic film noir, the villain or a villain almost always captures our hero. And when the villain captures them, they then have to use their intelligence to get out. I mean, in one book, a guy gets caught by a villain who isn't even the main villain of the story. This villain just thought he was trying to bust his problems open, and in the end he does. But it gives a little bit more to go on, and he had to go back and finish that part of the story later on. So these are the points that you need to learn. I mean, there's a 7-point structure. You start with a hook, and you let the players discover, or you let them cliffhanger. And the cliffhanger is usually like a fight or something like that. And then they discover it, and then cliffhanger, discover, cliffhanger, discover, cliffhanger. And then they end up at the end at a climax, and then a slight denouement. And you can go up and down. So you'll have your hook, your plot turn, your pinch point, your midpoint, your pinch point, your plot turn, and a resolution. Each of these has something major that happens. There's a Japanese structure called Ki, Sho, Ten, Kensu. Ki is your introduction. Sho is your development. Ten is where things twist out of control and go down. And Ketsu is the reconciliation. But possibly the best example of story structure to look into is the one by Joseph Campbell. Not William, Joseph Campbell. William was an editor anyway. But Joseph Campbell was a great mythologist of the 20th century. It's because of his work that George Lucas was inspired to write Star Wars. So the basic idea is you have a hero who is living in their society, but they're not quite part of it because they're a little bit weird to the society. Their society's under threat. There's a call to adventure that the hero typically pushes back against. And think of Luke. Luke pushed back against it initially, and he was like, I don't want to go out there because Uncle Owen but then he takes the restraining bolt off of R2-D2, and that forces him out the door. Who does he meet next? He meets Obi-Wan Kenobi, his mentor, and his mentor gives him his lightsaber, and gives him his father's lightsaber. So that's the arming of the hero. He goes to try and tell his uncle and aunt he's going, and they're already dead. So the mentor takes him on a grand adventure to rescue the princess. He goes into the Death Star, which is the belly of the whale. It's hell. It's the depths of depth. And then he frees the princess, and he and Han Solo and Chewbacca and all them, they get back on the thing and they fly out, and to return to, he doesn't return to Tatooine, but to return to a new place where he's a better help to those around him. He leads the charge against the Death Star and destroys it, and he gets the medal for it. That is a classic example of the hero arc. And you want to try and let your players achieve that hero arc, but they have to go there themselves. Don't force them into it. Don't railroad, as we say. We want them to make their choices and to make their decisions. So I want to thank you all for always showing up and for sharing these videos and for liking them and commenting on them, and I try to reply to every comment that I get. So make sure that you comment down below, and I will see you in the next video when we're going to talk about some of the side mechanic pieces of Savage Worlds. And if no one's told you this today, I love you. You're amazing. The world is a better place because you're in it. This is Ace Role Playing Games, and we're gaming for good.